few months ago, I did my first solo game jam with the jam25 game jam, and it was really fun. Stressful, but fun. I also learned a ton, so I decided to do more of them. Not too often, but regularly. And this past October, I took part in my second game jam. Welcome back to Other Pixel Games. I'm James, and this is the Scream Jam Diary. For those who don't know, a game jam is an event where people create a small game within a set amount of time. In the case of the Scream Jam, that amount of time is 7 days. Usually, game jams have a theme that you learn at the beginning of the jam, but with the Scream Jam it's a little different. All you need is to make a horror game. I had a lot of fun with this one, but I also had some genuinely tough moments, day 5 to be specific, where I almost quit, but I persevered and made it to the end. So what happened? Let's get into it. Going into this game jam, I already had a really solid idea of what I wanted to make. I'd been thinking about it for a few weeks, I'd been learning about some of the things I wanted to do like proc gen and pathfinding, and I already had a setting, art style and some art to work with. I will say, usually in game jams you're supposed to do everything from scratch, but there are a few things, as you'll see, that I did ahead of time. I didn't go overboard with it, and much of it I still had to update and change in the game jam, but since I was doing it all on my own, I decided that things I would have otherwise gotten from Unity Store for free, I decided was fair game to pre-prepare, like most of the artwork. Anyway, the game I wanted to make was called Crunch Time, and it was a survival horror roguelike game with no combat, where you're in a corporate office doing infinite overtime. I wanted the game to have a day-night cycle where during the day you search for food and drinks around the office, and at night you work at your desk to keep energy up. The twist is that the office goes on forever and food doesn't respawn, so the longer you play, the further you have to go to get the food and get back. On top of that, at night I wanted a monster to be roaming around the halls of the office. If it caught you, it would kill you, and if you're at your desk, you're safe. You know, thinking about it now, it probably says something about me that when I was told make a horror game, my instinct was make a game set in a corporate office where you're forced to do overtime, but I don't think we have time to unpack that right now. I like this game so much I started thinking about how I could make it into a full game. I thought about permanent upgrades like a laptop that you could use at other desks in the world so that you didn't have to go all the way back. I thought about distraction items and other flaws in the game. I even thought about multiple endings, one where you get to the exit and leave, but also a true ending where you keep going into the basement and then back up to the C-suite floors where you defeat a boss. But for now, let's get into the game jam. Like when I start any project, I began this one by opening up Miro and plotting out everything I thought I'd need to make. Both so I can plan out when I want to do it, and also so I have a place to cross it off. I didn't get everything on the first pass, and that's okay. This is a living document that's meant to be updated and changed as we go on. So for my horror roguelike, what I needed to make was a character with movement and death, a procedurally generated world with lots of rooms, an energy system with food and inventories, a day-night cycle, an unkillable monster, a tutorial, a narrative intro, then, if I had time, I wanted NPCs, a hide mechanic, and a leaderboard. With my list made, I got to work on the most important things, the things I would need in order to know whether any of the rest of it worked. I created the character, fully animated with my own art that I built in advance, which was actually a first for me in a game jam. The next big thing to get in was the proc gen, so I put together a basic room that I knew would work for the infinite generation, just a square with 4 doors, and rebuilt the proc gen system I'd had help with a few weeks ago. That system was almost exactly what I needed, but it still needed to be simplified a bit, so I spent most of the rest of the day putting that together with fewer doors than the original one, massively reducing my level design workload in the coming days. The system was incredibly simple. The game didn't need to come up with anything itself, it just had to place a room I'd already made down at a pre-designated grid point. Some proc gen systems are incredibly complicated, building out whole levels through code, but this system leaned much more heavily on level design for variety. The proc gen system took most of the day, but before I went to bed I still managed to get in the final building blocks of the project. The food items that would be littered around the level, the 2 inventories for the food you collect and the drop off at the desk, the player's energy, the player's desk where they'll be safe and regain their energy. I recolored the desk for the player to make it stand out a bit more and really drill into the player that that's the place they're trying to get to. Finally, I added a floor spray decal system, which wasn't a necessary building block, but I liked it and it was simple to throw in. Then I finished up for the night and went off to play Ghost of Yotai, which is really good by the way. Day 2. On day 3 I got the day-night cycle, set up the first pass of all the lighting using the luminosity code from my test level to get it flickering, then added a bunch of spotlights on the most important things in the level, like the player's desk and the food, so that at night they could find them more easily. When I first did this I thought I was just doing it to make things clearer, but after implementing it I'd realised that I'd added an additional interesting layer to the game. It gave the player a reason to be out at night other than just because they hadn't gotten back yet. Food items were much easier to see at night, so while you could find them in the day, it was much easier to get them at night. After adding the cycle, I put in the basic running system so that the player could hold down shift to run, and did some level design to make the starting room look much more interesting. I also made it so that there was blood on the walls and floors that could be faded in and out at the beginning and end of the night cycle. It was also here that I made the decision that I really hated the doors in my game, just as I knew I would. I mean, look at them. They're so bad. They barely even make sense. Honestly, I think that the biggest mistake I made was just having the perspective walls. Most games like this just have it so that you can't see the side and bottom walls, and if I'd done that, the whole of the art would have been much easier. But I didn't, and as I'm writing this now, it's way too late to go back and change that. Anyway, I resolved that before I did any more level design, I'd create new doors. Something much simpler, corridors instead of doors. With that decision made, I collapsed onto the sofa and gave up for the day. I started out day 4 redrawing the doors in the level art, and kind of breaking my brain over perspectives for a while, before finally getting it right and uploading it into Unity, and breaking my entire level. I rebuilt the levels and then spent the morning building out templates for each room so that the proc gen was technically complete, and could make a full map with all of the door combinations. Partly so I'd be able to make the actual rooms later, partly so that I could learn as quickly as possible whether there was anything wrong with the system, whether it would work now that all the pieces were in place. Thankfully it did, so I could move on to add a bunch of lightning tweaks to make it less aggressive, and then start work on something that I've been wanting to set up for a while now, the UI and the player's death. The player's character's death. The HUD was pretty easy to set up, though I did have to spend some time on YouTube learning about fillable UI images, but I got through that real quick. Where it was a bit more complicated was with the player death in the main menu. I originally had this really dumb idea that everything would be in one scene. The game would go on in the background and you would just get control of the character when you hit start. That turned out to be more complicated than I had expected. I'd assumed that if I just reloaded the scene it would reset everything and act as if it was the first time load, but when I tried it, so many things were in the state they'd been in before, and after trying a few things out I couldn't immediately get it working, making me wonder if it was worth it to keep trying. I only had 3 more days left after all. I had thought it would be really fun to see everything in the background, but also I had originally planned to put NPCs in that are moving around the game, making the background look pretty interesting. Unfortunately I still didn't have that, so what was the point in having the main menu being in the game scene? In the end I just created a menu scene and just put the starting room in the background, setting it to spooky mode for aesthetics. As for player death, I just made it so that the screen went black, the player stopped moving, and you got a button to return to the main menu, with the intention of coming back later and putting it up. I ended day 4 feeling pretty good about the game, a feeling which was not to last. Day 5 was hell. I almost gave up on the game multiple times, and I found the limit of ChatGPT's usefulness as an information gatherer. Today I wanted to work on the game's pathfinding. It's also where I learned not to trust ChatGPT with figuring out something I only have a bit of information about. A few weeks earlier, I discussed with ChatGPT how pathfinding could work. If I could use a nav mesh since I only had one enemy on it, even though it was a 2D game. It told me yes, so I went into the jam with that understanding. Before starting, I checked in with a tutorial and with ChatGPT again, just to make sure, and it told me I needed a package from GitHub that I didn't have. It was an older package, so I quickly checked Unity's package manager and found a newer AI navigation package. Thinking that maybe ChatGPT's info was out of date, I asked if the AI package would do the same thing, and I was thankful to learn that it would. So I downloaded the package and spent the next hour setting it up, only to find it not building a nav mesh. Of course, I could have done something wrong, so I checked and rechecked, then asked ChatGPT, only for it to tell me that no, that package it said would be fine actually didn't have what I needed and I had to use the GitHub package. Frustrated, but relieved I now knew what I had to do, I installed the GitHub package and spent the next hour until lunch setting it all up, only to have it not work again. Not only was the setup confusing because the names of the components were not the same as the names of the files, so ChatGPT kept telling me different things, but when it was all finally in, it still didn't work. At this point, I was so frustrated by what was happening, I'd long forgotten to record what I was doing, so I genuinely apologise for whatever editor James decided to show you here. When I went back to ChatGPT to ask what was wrong, it started to say I was using the wrong files and I needed the 2D versions of the pathfinding files that could be found in the GitHub repository. But when I checked the repository itself to see why it didn't download those files, I learned a very important lesson. ChatGPT lies. Those files simply didn't exist. When I told ChatGPT that the files I wanted didn't exist, its only response was this. Basically, yeah, that's right. So when I asked if in actuality NavMesh couldn't be used for 2D, it said this. Basically that no, it couldn't, and you had to use either a custom thing or a package called A-Star Pathfinding. So grumpy, frustrated, and considering quitting, I went down for lunch and to complain to my parents about the whole ordeal. Though, at least I knew now that I could use A-Star Pathfinding project to get it working. Or so I thought. Upon returning from lunch, I set up the new system, got it in place, and got it baking in NavMesh Surface. It was and is a system that actually works for 2D. The paid version, I believe, is what's used in games like Cult of the Lamb, which I loved. The problem was, at least in the free version, it simply wouldn't work for Infinite Proc Gen. Actually, that's not strictly true. I did have a plan that would technically have worked, save for one little problem. The plan was that every time you moved rooms, it would move the NavMesh and rebuild so that there was always a surface on the rooms that existed in the level. I managed to make it so that the surface rebuilt every time I moved, and that's when I came to a screeching halt. You see, every time I stepped through into a new room, the game paused for a full half second before continuing so that it could rebuild the mesh. It made the game unplayable. Maybe this wouldn't have been so bad if it took 20, 10 or even 5 minutes to go from room to room, but this was every 3 to 5 seconds. I simply couldn't keep this system. I foolishly went back to ChatGPT to ask it to lie to me again, and it did just that. I asked if I could bake a NavMesh into every room prefab, and it said that I could, but I'd have to add some code to link them up in game. But it'd be much lighter on performance, so great. So I did that in every room tile that could connect down into the starting area. It was a really awkward process, which should have been my first clue that it wasn't going to work, where I had to load the prefab into the scene, create the NavMesh, save it, then delete it. After it was all set up, I started up the game and immediately learned that you could only have one NavMesh at a time. Upon confronting ChatGPT about this, the damn AI agreed that obviously that wasn't possible. It was at this point I considered giving up again. I was frustrated, angry, and more than a little disheartened. This problem was because I wanted to generate the level as the player played, because the world was infinite. If it had been a finite level, we could have built it all from the start and done all of the generation then and there, but that's not how it worked. I considered just not having a monster and letting the game work on vibes more than actual threat, but I really didn't like that. In the end, with a combination of advice from the internet, some tutorials on YouTube, and, unfortunately, ChatGPT again, I came up with a really ugly solution that I still don't like. Similar to how the ProcGen system works, I create a grid in each room and the AI can move between the grid points, following a path to the player, but only if there's no collision between them, or at least that's how it's meant to work. Because the level disappears as the player moves, the AI often finds itself unable to move along the path, and instead just goes directly from the point it's at to the point it's going to. But I was so done with it at this point that I just wanted it to be over, so since most of the time when it's ignoring collision it's off screen, I decided to just live with it. I set the player as its target and went to bed with the hope that tomorrow would be better and I'd be able to gather enough energy to want to keep moving forward. With only 2 days left, including today, on day 6 I did some triage. I went through all the stuff I had left, figured out what was important and what I could do without, then crossed out everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. I decided to do the 2 most important things today and polish everything up to make it feel like a game tomorrow. So I spent the morning doing level design. I built corridors and offices up until lunch, ensuring that I had one of every room piece before I took a break. I had originally planned to have 2 of each piece, but having only 1 more day left, and after the previous day's frustrations, I just wanted to get it over with. By the end of the morning though, the level generation was actually looking really interesting. After lunch I tackled the last really frustrating thing, the enemy AI. I had a basic system in from setting up the pathfinding, but the enemy was really boring. I made 3 major changes to what I'd done the previous day. First of all, I made it so that when the player was sat at their desk, the enemy would not be able to interact with them, and would just wander around the world by picking a random grid point and moving towards it, then waiting for a second and moving towards another one. Next, I gave the enemy a large collider and changed it so that the enemy would always wander, unless you were running while inside the collider. This was something I was sure I wouldn't have time to get in, so I'm glad I could. It was to ratchet up tension while you were running and give you a reason to walk sometimes, like if you thought the enemy was nearby. Finally, I made it so if the player was ever within a certain radius of the enemy, it would immediately chase the player, regardless of whether they were running or not, and only if the player was away from their desk. By the end of the day, the AI was a lot better, though the pathfinding system was, and still is, awful. Now you were always safe at your desk, you could walk around mostly safe, but if the enemy heard you running, it would chase you, and if you got too close, it would chase you. With that all done, I hooked up the enemy animations and called it a day. Pretty happy with how the 6th day went. The final day, I put in the finishing touches. I added audio, which was really important now that I'd made the AI somewhat decent. It had a tentacly walking sound that got louder the closer it was to you, to let you know when you had to stop running or risk being caught. It had a monster scream when the monster detected you, then all of the nice touches that just help with game feel, like an audio cue when you use the computer and pick up food, as well as player footsteps. I also took the time to speed up the player animation and sound when they run, which I had forgotten to do earlier. Finally, I put in all the finishing touches for the game. I prettied up the death screens so that there was a different one for each type of death, and learned how to implement animations in the UI. I added a day counter in the HUD to let you know how many days you'd been alive for, and added that into the death screen. I added a title to the main menu and my logo to the splash screen. I submitted it all to Itch and realised that the title had broken the main menu as it was covering the play button. I fixed that, and a half dozen other things that I found while trying to play it in Itch, then itch.io came under a DDoS attack, and I had to spend all evening trying to upload it. But with about 16 hours left after they extended the deadline due to the attack, I finally submitted my second solo game jam game, Crunch Time, to the Scream Jam. So how did I do? I did okay. A little better than the GMTK game jam in some areas, about the same in others. There were a little under 1,000 entries, and I got top 30% in story, about top 40% in horror, aesthetics and enjoyment, and I got a little bit better than top 50% in creativity and sound design. The latter of which, as you know, I threw in on the last day, so I'm more than happy with that. Would I have liked to get higher? Sure, who wouldn't? But considering how recently I started working on code, the fact that I'm working alone, and the fact that in the GMTK game jam my best score was top 45%, I'd say I'm improving, and after all, the purpose of the jam was to learn and have fun. And honestly, I really enjoyed my time on it and learned a lot, despite the horrors of day 5. Like last time, it's left me with the undeniable knowledge that I should do more game jam stuff, but more than that, it's made it clear to me that the places I need to focus on next are AI and game UI. If I want to move forward with the Zelda-like, I'll want to be able to make cool bosses and build a point-and-click inventory system, so those are what I'll be working on next. I'm taking November off code to write a book, as I always do in November, but I'll be spending that time thinking about what I want to learn and planning what I want to do next. The next game jam I'll be taking part in will be Bracky's just before my birthday in February. Thanks for watching. Did you take part in the Scream Jam? Are there other jams you think I should know about? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe.